A holy dancer from Ceylon leads us into the spinning universe of dance, where both beauty and variety at first seem endless and bewildering. For every spoken language, there's an accompanying language of movement, each one carrying messages from the heart of a society. To understand the role of dance in human history, we must somehow decode these varied patterns of body language, of silent communication. These are folk dancers of Germany. These, whirling dervishes of Turkey. Ostrich dancers from the Andes. Funeral maskers from the Sudan. Americans at a Sunday afternoon love-in in Los Angeles. What have these different movement styles, each one apparently so unique and so irrational, what do they have to tell us about the history of culture? With Choreometrics, we enter this planetary kaleidoscope looking for steady pattern, searching to find measures of movement that vary regularly with culture and with social structure. This Burmese hill farmer appears to be tracing intricate circles with his movements. We'll begin our search here, observing the tracing of the limbs through space. And in part one, test out a sort of human geometry of the dance. The straight line arm movements of these Navajo girls define a one-dimensional system, in contrast to the curving, two-dimensional arm style of these Spanish girls. And to the spiraling arabesques of these Indonesian candle dancers tracing three-dimensional paths. The up and down bouncing and linear arm shaking of these New Guinea dancers shapes a one-dimensional style, contrastive to the curving two-dimensional gestures of these Polynesians, and to the spiraling three-dimensional gyrations of a Ceylonese fire dancer. The same forms appear also in work. Indian women scraping manioc move their arms up and down along a straight line in one dimension, different from the circles traced by these South Asian women grinding flour in a stone quern in two dimensions, and from the spirals of the rice bundle in the hands of this Filipino thresher moving in three dimensions. All human behavior can be compared along this scale, and the proportion of one, two, and three-dimensional movement varies in interesting ways. In simple economies, 70% of the dances are highly one-dimensional. The explanation may lie in the kinds of tools a culture has. The members of simple economies using only stone or wooden tools must literally wear their way through hard reality by scraping like these Maracatari women, by rubbing to make fire by friction like this New Guinea Highlander, or by pounding like these Jivaros beating fibers, or by poking to spare their brittle wooden arrow tips. These Cuivas carefully poke them straight under the bank, but they get their fish. By jabbing, this Eskimo game puts a premium on the hunter's skill at straight jabbing. A wooden tool may be easy to make, but its fragile edge limits it to careful straight strokes. Thus, the relative fragility of the points and edges of stone and bone and wooden tools impels their users to linear action, whereas a harder metal blade encourages a curving, changeful, slashing approach. Where the Australian must chip away with little straight strokes so as not to break the point of his wooden chopper, this Malay can swing his steel axe in wide, forceful curves. A South American gardener gently opens up the earth with his digging stick while his wives plant in the crevices. Their linear style damages neither the delicate topsoil of the jungle garden nor the point of the digging tool. And when these Maracataris dance, a man with a staff like a digging stick in the lead, the women following, the whole group stepping straight, they reinforce the linear style of the garden scene. Manioc cultivators all through the Orinoco Valley dance this way. These are the Barasana. Among the nearby Cuiva, every dancer wields a staff. And so in South America, in New Guinea, wherever tools of stone and bone and wood are common, linear movement prevails. Even babies are bounced with jerky linearity. The jerky bounce, so common in Melanesian dance, shows how dance can reinforce the elements of everyday movement style. And in the same way, the two-dimensional arm dances of these seamen of the Coral Isles mime the wide, slow curves they use in handling their canoes. The iron sickles of Hausa gardeners loop in the big curves Africans employ at work and in the dance. Indeed, a fluid two-dimensionality is typical of Black Africa. Afro-American boatmen battling a wild Dutch Guiana river. West African maskers turning circular somersaults. Female mourners rolling in the dust at a Sudanese wake. Dogon headdresses sweeping round like sabers. The crescent arms of the Spanish Jota. A Yugoslav farmer swinging his steel scythe in the wheat. All these are typical examples of curving movement from cultures that use metal tools. Indeed, where metal is traditional, more than 80% of the dances are likely to be strongly curvilinear. Perhaps metal benefited mankind by permitting a more flexible approach to tasks. Metallurgy and two-dimensionality are related to increases of productivity and centralization of government. Three-dimensionality, illustrated in this scene of the military art of South India, further illustrates the tie between curving movement and increasing stratification. 80% of the dances in large states are high on such three-dimensionality. In fact, one may map the whole zone of classic empire from China to Spain by the relative frequency of spiraling forms in dance. This body spiral is in a Spanish jota. These are candy dancers of salons spinning curves into spirals. And these are gans from central India. Flexible three-dimensionality adorns both the dance and the music of Paulay, and can be seen in the multidimensional approach of a Balinese sculptor to his three-dimensional work. The hands of these Siamese dancing girls twist like spiked flowers. A Formosan priest appeals for a good harvest with spiral hand gestures. Monkey, the comic hero of China, land of irrigation and rice, shapes shining spirals with his baton, showing off his hand skills. The Japanese harvest ceremony features elaborate spirals in tight synchrony. In fact, 80% of the dances from irrigation cultures employ spiraling. Thus, the spatial aspects of dance movement seem to be a function of the means of production. Summing up, one-dimensionality is most frequent among simple producers. Two-dimensionality in cultures like those of Black Africa, which have metal tools, and three-dimensionality in the dances of the irrigation empires that topped the productive scale prior to industrialism, where a complex of technology and stratification controlled the lifeflow of water to the fields. Thus, there seems to be a close link between dance style and man's history, as the dominant trace form varies with the level of productivity. The second measure of dance style concerns the middle of the body. One observes whether the chest, shoulders, belly, or hips are moved out of line with each other. This we term multi-unit style. Or whether the torso is handled as one segment in single-unit style. On screen right, note the multi-unit trunk use, 90% of which occurs with full agriculture. On screen left, single unit, accounting for 87% of the dances of simple producers. This contrast between solid and articulated trunk styles also varies with climate. About 90% of multi-unit dances occur in warm latitudes. Multi-unit is tropical. Contrary-wise, 85% of the dances from cultures in cold latitudes employ a block-like posture, as notable among these modern Ainu as among their ancestors, dancing at a ceremony of bear sacrifice. This compact body attitude is common throughout the Arctic. It provides a solid base for the hunter's heavy work on the ice in the far north where big game is plentiful. When the Eskimo hunter begins his long wait on the ice at the seal hole, he settles into a wedge-like single-unit posture to face the polar cold. Meanwhile, his womenfolk must stay inside to keep the baby alive at the fire. This division of labor is essential wherever there's an annual season of severe winter weather. The women's play arouses the child to whole body exertion and a solid body attitude that the Arctic hunter needs for his heavy work in the cold. Actually, variants of this posture occur all round the perimeter of the Pacific among hunters and descendants of hunters whose lives depend upon a single powerful spear thrust. This Australian Aborigine, reviving an ancient ritual, employs this rigid posture. And east across the Pacific, we find it again among the hunters of Mato Grosso and Patagonia in South America. This Umatina Indian is stalking a fish along a riverbank. He shoots it. He and his comrades dance in a markedly single-unit style. It closely resembles the body attitude of the Eskimo in his hide parka. Among hunters, the man is usually stage center, dramatizing his food-getting role, while women watch appreciatively at the side. Thus, the hunter-fisher single-unit stance, brought from Siberia, reinforced by life in the American Arctic, passes south. It shapes the dance style of the salmon fishers of the northwest coast. It forms 90% of North American Indian dances in the Southwest at a Navajo ritual. On the sunny dance plazas of the Pueblo Indians. Single unit lives on among all the descendants of the Siberians, the first Americans, as it does among these latter-day Aztecs, honoring their ancestors on the great plaza of Mexico City. Single unit also accounts for about 90% of the dances of South American Indians. Note the solid stance in the work of these Chapaya Indians, descendants of the Incas, and in their sober dance to panpipe and drum. Here is single unit, again among Aymara dancers at a fiesta in the Andes. And from the mountains through the Amazon basin, the solid block-like torso is universal, as among these Kamayura of the Chingu. Thus, the settlement of the Americas by Siberian hunters put a stamp on the movement style of their descendants all over South America. And one finds it all around the Pacific. Australian dance is more than 90% single unit. It accounts for more than 70% of the dances of Melanesian yam gardeners. And though less frequent in Malaysia, single unit torso is striking among these Indonesian hunters, the Mentawai. This posture molds more than 80% of the dances of East Asia. Note the straight backs of these Chinese Formosans. It dominates Japan. These deer maskers move their torsos as one piece. The great cold northern plains of Eurasia, stretching from Siberia to Europe, have been another avenue of influence for the northern hunter style. In Tibet, monks increased the fearsomeness of their demon dances, returning like stone statues. In Central Asia, the Uzbeks, descendants of Genghis Khan, perform a stiff-waisted horseman's dance. Turkish dervishes whirl with a quiet middle body. A single unit, Europe's link to the Arctic, is the rule in most European dances. These are Carpathian poles. Note the ramrod straight backs of these Hebridean Scots. The roots of their long ways dance can perhaps be seen in this English horn dance, an emblem of Britain's not too distant hunter past, as their leader presently remarks.
And this is dancing too. Believe it or not, they've been doing this in England for over 1,000 years.
European colonists imported the single unit tradition into North America, where square dancers hold the middle body upright and steady as they weave their way through a complex floor plan. It's America's uniqueness that here the undiluted single unit style encounters and lives with its opposite, the multi-unit style of Black America. The torso of this Harlem professional bursts out in high-speed energy that shifts between body parts. And he can flick into instantaneous synchrony with his partner. Variants of this electrifying hip-twisting style developed in every Afro-American zone, in the South, in the West Indies, all around the Caribbean. Their origin, of course, was in the dance of Africa. West Africans are said to encourage such hip-rocking dances to prepare young people for the responsibilities of marriage. They seem to be more common in female than in male dances, and this may explain their special prominence in Africa and other tropical regions, since their women often outdo men as food producers, and thus their movements hold the center of the stage. In warm latitudes, a woman is not housebound by the weather if she has a child. She can take it with her to her work. Thus, 88% of West and Central African dances and 90% of South African dances are multi-unit. These Luba women, who are gardeners and daughters of gardeners, twist proudly. A Chopi man shows off his pelvic skill and smiles. Multi-unit, 81% in East Africa. where a virtuoso accents his twist with tempo breaks. These wakambas of East Africa employ vertical undulations, as well as a myriad of other multi-unit devices. Vertical undulations of torso and head are the rule in this Maasai dance, as in many African pastoral groups. In North Africa, multi-unit drops to 65%. At the southern rim of the Sahara, black Arab girls come out to greet a camel caravan from the desert. Their torsos vibrate and undulate vertically. In Morocco, professional dancers combine vertical with horizontal torso movements in the belly dance, probably known to the temple prostitutes of ancient Egypt. Belly dancing is essential entertainment in North Africa and the Middle East, where respectable women once never showed themselves in public places, like this all-male bistro in Turkey. In Central Europe, where women share the farm work, they sometimes also swing their hips, as in this Hungarian wedding dance. In the whole world of early agriculture, from the Danubian plain to India, fertility was a core value and sensuous dances were encouraged. Multi-unit is one more link between India and Indonesia, where a more restrained style confines itself to swaying hips and subtle shoulder gestures. The island track of the Malayo-Polynesians into the Pacific lies in a tropic zone, where women and children can share in the work of the men. Perhaps Polynesian migration may be traced by the diffusion of the fluid multi-unit style from island to island across the warm sea. These are children of Yap, a possible early stop on the Polynesian route into the Pacific. A 1,000 miles east to the Gilberts, where the multi-unit continuity is maintained in the pelvic virtuosity of these Micronesian women. Pursuing the track of Polynesian culture into the far Pacific, we find the climax of the multi-unit style in the modern hula, the dance of all Western Polynesia. Perhaps the eroticism of the hula has to do with the unusually high position that women hold in Polynesian culture. Now on this green world, we'll map the body attitudes. We'll use blue for the single unit hunter style in North Eurasia and round the primitive Pacific. And we'll use orange for the multi-unit gardener style of Africa, South Asia, and Polynesia. Both regions are examples of the effect of climate and the sexual division of labor on dance and on movement style. Familiar regions of culture will emerge from this map as we subdivide these ancient zones of movement style by using one more of the many choreometric measures of dance and movement, the scale of trace forms. Remember, we note 3 geometric patterns. First, straight line movement in 1 dimension. Next, curving circular movement in 2 dimensions. Third, spiraling movement in 3 dimensions. Of these 3 types, one-dimensional movement is the major case in the Circum-Pacific. Vertical lines striping the single unit blue of Australia and the islands north to Japan indicate the frequency of linear movement, as in the straight arm chop of this Australian bushman. And in the linear arm movement, the up and down bounce that accentuates the rigid trunk of these New Guinea dancers. The same design of vertical lines on a blue background represents the main pattern we found in Siberian dancing, such as in this Yakut processional. Straight stepping, the held 1-unit trunk against the straight arm movement, even the linear jaws harp playing. In all respects, these Yakut dancers conform to the linear solid trunk style, presumably brought into America long ago by Siberian migrants, thus shaping the dances of the first Americans to this ancient model, seen here in the square body attitude and the vigorous straight movement of an Eskimo hunter. This style filled both North and South America with people. For example, among these Orinoco Valley Indians, the Siberian processional comes alive again in a ritual dance of solid trunk and linear movement. Indeed, this is the primordial style of the whole Circum-Pacific Basin, one more evidence of the prehistoric unity of this zone. Europe and the Mideast belong to the zone of solid trunk, but in this region, curving trace form is the rule. Curving movement combines with the blue of solid trunk to give Europe and Mideast a distinctive pattern, seen in this stately springtime ritual from northern Spain. In orange multi-unit Africa, rounded forms such as these Bantu girls employ produce another pattern, multi-unit combined with curving. Flexible torso, flowing curves, explosions of energy make the hot style on which great African performers endlessly improvise. You see it in this Chopi ballet. And again, in the dances of Black America, from Harlem to Rio. The Maritime Pacific is also a red multi-unit zone, where curving two-dimensional movement is the dominant trace form. Typically, these hip-rocking Gilbertese women use curving arm gestures, a combination seen again in the fluid, playful, erotic style of the modern Polynesian hula. Three-dimensional trace forms, indicated in wavy lines, are commonest in the Orient, especially in East Asia, where the combination of solid trunk and three-dimensional spiraling provides the basis for the system of swift attack and avoidance one sees at its peak in traditional Pekin opera. The wavy lines also point to the importance of three-dimensionality in South Asia and in Indonesia. Spiraling hand play, rolling eyes, looping arms combine with a mobile torso to create the subtly ornamented dance forms one finds in India, in Java, and in Bali. In this peak moment in a contemporary version of Balinese dance drama, princely characters spiraling encounter the monkey army, mobile shoulders, and South Asian elaboration is joined to the seated dance of the Pacific. Thus, two choreometric measures of easily observed aspects of behavior bring order to the kaleidoscope of dance and culture. Each region of dance has a distinctive movement pattern that feeds back to a major cultural tradition. Each represents, in a different way, the vital role of dance and movement style in the stabilization and the growth of human culture. And these creative patterns are not arbitrary symbols. Instead, they represent the interplay of economic productivity and a climatically influenced division of labor on both dance and human history. If dance is the oldest of the arts, it's also the most mysterious, for it communicates through the silent languages of the body. Here we probe into the meaning of dance by focusing on one of the key elements of this little understood expressive system, on palm play. The palm, or inner hand, is handled in many ways in the dances of the world. Indonesian dancers use their palms flirtatiously. Polynesian women present their palms provocatively. Palm play has an important role in courtship and in sexual relationships. In this wooing scene from a Thai dance drama, the lady struggles to keep her palms free. She's won when her palm is captured and firmly held. In certain formal dances of the Far East, propriety demands that the palm be entirely covered, not only by women, but by men. Like these Torres Islanders, male dancers in half the world hold objects in their hands, thus neutralizing the palm. In Africa, we discovered, dancers often present both palms open. To learn more about this sometimes enigmatic signal, we'll go back to the wellspring of human culture. We'll begin in Africa with the basis of human sociability, with the sensitive, naked skin, and with touch, the interpersonal sense. The pleasure-giving touch of the palm or inner hand on skin ties the social knot. The warm contact of the palm holds friends together. It links lovers in the ancient harmony of souls and epidermises. This is evening in a Gond youth village, where girls are grooming their lovers. The palm is a main conduit of loving contact and of tenderness. The mother's palm welcomes the baby into its culture. It shapes the prime social unit of mother and child. The infant learns trust in its mother's hands and experiences society as it is passed from palm to palm round the family circle. These New York kids practice one kind of interaction in their palm play.
To see what he could do, he drank all the water, he ate all the soap, he tried to eat the bathtub, but it was just salt.
And these Bushman boys follow a far different system with their polyrhythms. In this American schoolgirls game, palms are presented, slapped, and clapped, and the torso begins to undulate, as we found it tends to do when palms are opened out in dance. In Africa, grown women play palm games before their children, showing off their feminine hand skills. Wise women like this Pomo Indian shaman have used their palms to stroke away illness since time began. A Jahat Malay medicine man at work. He wipes illness out of a child's back, then whisks it away. A Bushman baby reaches out to the healer's palm as it vibrates against its belly. This was filmed at an evening dance where men become possessed and heal the sick. The possessed man needs aid himself. He finds it in the lap of a comrade whose palms gently vibrate against his temples until he sleeps. The palm blesses. An Orinoco Indian shaman soothes an anxious follower with a palm gesture that is general in religion. Among Protestants,
everybody under the tent, raise your right hand and pray with me, please. Father, in the name of Jesus, in behalf of every soul listening today and watching this telecast.
Among Catholics, among Vodouists. Palms bless the scene as the cult leader transmits healing power to his acolytes through his hands. A Bushman woman offers her palms like an entrance ticket to the dance circle and then settles down to palm play. Palm to palm, partner to partner in an alpine dance. Palms cement friendship, seal off enmity, and renew relationships. These are Tuaregs at a Saharan market. Between greetings, the palm is shrouded. In fact, palm communication seems so potent and the palm so vulnerable that in many cultures it's sparingly exposed. Mid-Easterners smear henna on the palm of a new bride to protect her as she sets forth weeping into matrimony. Thai dancers wear fringes of long nails when they expose their palms. In the not-so-distant past, no nice lady would go out without her gloves on. Men hide this sensitive area in their pockets. And all of us withdraw at times by hiding our palms in our armpits or in other ways. One way is to hold things, all sorts of things. Thus the palm, a prime mover in social interaction, is often hard to observe in scenes of everyday life. We study dance because the stylized coordination of dancing makes the patterns of body movement, including those of the palm, easier to observe. Here's opened palm in an African bird dance. Here's covered palm in this South American bird dance. The holding palm is significantly more frequent in male dances, while female dancers more often present both palms open, as here in Africa. Such observations became the basis of the continuum of palm play: presented, holding, covered. We have located the 500-plus dances in our world sample along this continuum, and within it found 6 types of palm activity whose frequencies vary significantly in terms of culture. These 6 points along the palm scale will now be illustrated so that you can learn to recognize them. Point 1, covered. The elaborate shrouding of feminine palms in this Korean court dance seem to represent the rigid code of propriety that governed feminine behavior in old Korea. Such codes of etiquette and the palm covering that symbolizes them seems to be characteristic of the stratified cultures of East Asia, such as old Korea and the Kingdom of Nepal. There, class and caste split society into upper and lower strata, with the ruler on top. This is a dance from rural Nepal. The fact that the women wear long sleeves and the men do not indicates that long sleeves are worn out of feminine modesty. Probably another factor is the Arctic weather of East Asia and its antecedent cultures. The hands need protection from the cold in this part of the world. The bird totem dances, so common in the North Pacific, may be the ritual source of palm covering. Hunters hide their human hands beneath wings of feathers so as to identify with the eagles whose skill in finding game they wish to share. Wearing wings of plastic, these Japanese folk dancers perform the dance of the heron. Here from the city streets is a link between the totemic bird dance and courtly gagaku. In gagaku, the soaring movement of silken wings, the beaked mask, the fish embroidering the sleeves renew the predatory hunter theme. The lavish display of expensive silk in these big sleeves makes them the symbol of conspicuous consumption for the rich. And since manual labor is obviously impossible for anyone dressed like this, these sleeves also exhibit the conspicuous leisure of the powerful ruling classes, especially of their womenfolk. Indeed, in Chinese theater, noble characters may be identified by their elaborate manipulation of big sleeves. Again, linking palm covering to social layering. Covered, point 1 on the scale of palm play. Point 2, partly covered. A Chinese actress draws attention to the erogenous center of her palm by partly covering it with a pink handkerchief. An Indonesian dancer emphasizes the act of partially draping her palm. A bevy of Chinese dancers play with ribbons, intermittently covering their palms, while a complex orchestra accompanies the dance. Both of these are symbols of class societies, such as Old Tibet. Partly and intermittently covered was a general feature in Tibetan dances. In fact, all through Eurasia. This is a Cretan kolo, one of the many handkerchief dances of the Mediterranean. Close inspection shows that the woman's palm is intermittently covered. In the English Morris dance, hands are also partly covered. This example comes from the western limits of old Eurasian influence. Point 3 on the scale, the interning palm. The palms are withdrawn by being continually turned in toward the body, with one palm occasionally visible. Interning is found in the Far East, for instance, in this Burmese solo, but is commonest in the complex cultures of the Middle East and Europe, where the withdrawal of the palm seems to symbolize the restraint and alienation essential in a stratified society. This is a Persian Tajik farmer dancing with courtly grace. Here's a ballet star from Uzbekistan in Central Asia, exhibiting her virtuosity in palm control. North Indian maidens dancing the way their ancestors might have done to welcome Alexander the Great, with twisting hips and interning palms. This same sensuous combination is employed by Spanish flamenco dancers. Note the man offering love with an open hand, while the woman replies with coiling, interning palms. It is this palm style that dominates the dances of Europe, including the ballet itself. The prince pursues. The black swan signals him to wait and dances for him with elaborately interning palms and with a similar pattern of opening and closing lower limbs. this presenting and withdrawing behavior is perhaps intended to perplex the prince. Maneuvers that conceal the inner hand are found mainly in the large stratified societies of Europe and Asia. In such cultures, the palm with its nurturing, sharing, erotic message is sparingly presented. Indeed, stratified urban settings generally put restraints upon the public expression of affect, especially by women. Holding in neutral, the positions of every day. In one, the palm encloses something. In neutral, it hangs free, facing the body. Though common in simple socio-economies, holding or neutral occurs in 70% of the dances we studied. These are our East European shepherds in a midwinter ritual snake dance, holding on to each other. In the Andes, the viejitos, the little old men, hold on to their walking sticks. These are Pueblo Indian deer dancers, holding sticks so they can dance on all fours. Holding is the general practice among the tribes of the Circum-Pacific, where males dominate public ceremonies. Males usually carry emblems of their ritual or productive status to the dance ground, and this is understandable, for after all, males have long been the principal makers and users of tools. Sudanese cattlemen dance with the herding sticks that are seldom out of their hands. Men of the Torres Straits dance with a conical fish trap in one hand and a spear in the other, identifying themselves as fishermen and defenders of their island homes. A guild of German barrel makers handle the green May garlands in a regimented style that shows off the potency of a well-drilled male group. In complex cultures, even in the theater, signs of the solidary male defense group register as the symbols of state power. And regimented manipulation is everywhere the sign of military might. Point 4, holding. Point 5, neutral. The empty-handed style, the dancers showing that they have no weapons, no axe to grind. These are West Africans. Here, in the Amazon jungle, the men wear masks and carry rattles. The women go bare, with empty hands, their bodies declaring them. Women, in their dances, very often seem to be enacting the joy of life where hands are empty because tools and emblems are in the way. These are Vezo women of Madagascar. These are Wakambas from Central Africa, again with empty hands. These are women of the sea gypsies who still live by gathering shellfish along the shores of the Gulf of Burma. Food collecting is probably the first and oldest mode of subsistence, and it is usually women's work. Food gathering is the subsistence style of these African pygmies, and you see that both the men and the women are dancing with empty hands. Among the Bushmen, who are African desert gatherers, everything is shared. They dance turn on turn, a neutral palm becoming an open invitation to join in. From this point, the two main dancers accent open palm presentation, point 6 on the scale. A pygmy female religious leader opens out both palms at hip level in a primordial gesture of giving. This is a scene from the beginning of religion. Presentation of both palms is most frequent where women produce half or more of the food. Such are the Ainu, the Aborigines of Japan, here inviting the spirits to a feast with both hands open. Among the California Indians, women produce the staple food, acorn flour. And here a female shaman prepares to find and heal the illness in her patient by stroking him with the same palm movement she uses to smooth the gravel filter that leaches the poison out of her acorn flour. Flower making, comforting, healing, all are traditional feminine preoccupations. All are performed with smoothing movements of the open palm. The curved palms and the undulating gait of these Polynesian women of Tau Island convey the same gentle message. From a complementary culture where women have leading roles in public ceremonies. These dancers are from Fiji, where women often rule as queens. These dancers are Dayaks of Borneo, where women can and do inherit the land they work. This is a Bodo priestess from complementary tribal India. Her open palms invite her acolytes to present their palms in turn. More palm display, this time from Madagascar, another land where women often lead in ritual. Indeed, all through the gardening tropics, wherever women take public roles, palm presentation is present in the dance. In Africa, in a settlement of Africans in Suriname, in a bird dance of West Africa, this time done by women, with loving symbols of opened-out palms and bare bodies. Another African bird dance, not predatory but erotic, the gentle mating dance of the crested crane. Clapping hands, bare undulating torsos, cooing voices, all ancient feminine magic, all invitations to join in. The symbolic power of the palm may come from its feminine nurturant role. For here in this gardening world where women produce and hand round the food, the caress becomes the central gesture of the dance. It's also the baseline of the palm continuum. The holding palm is the midsection. The withheld palm is the opposite extreme. Each of the 6 types of palm play along the continuum represents one way this potent signal is handled in a region of culture. Point 1, covered. Commonest in the Far East, where display of affect is governed by strict rules of etiquette. Point 2, part covered, seen from Indonesia to the Mediterranean. Point 3, interned. All Eurasia, especially Indonesia and Europe. Point 4, holding, a male specialty in the Circum-Pacific. Point 5, neutral, most frequent in simple economies and in female dances. Point 6, presented, characteristic of the complementary world. The vibrant, wide-open palms of these Maasai girls rehearse their nurturant roles. Backstage, a drama, a child reaching out for contact, fingers spreading the inner hand wide. Its touch a signal for the magic to begin. First, 2 wide-open palms give him the love he seeks. And then they lift him up and support him as he views the world.